It was 1983. The Police were huge at the time. The Guardian and the BBC had both called them the biggest band in the world. They were an intellectual power trio with 4 hit records under their belts. So the 5th studio album from the Police was eagerly anticipated by both fans and the music press. They were at the top of their game, enjoying the kind of success most musicians can only dream of. So why were they at each other's throats? And why would it ultimately turn out to be their last record? This is the story of Synchronicity, Disagreement, and Sting's Broken Rib. Guitarist Andy Summers said, "Despite the underlying degradation of the group's psyche, we managed to imitate a nice camaraderie and can still enjoy the process of recording, however difficult. We are back in paradise, making an album expected to sell in the millions, living like kings, wealthy, famous. Well, why shouldn't we be happy?" The recording for Synchronicity took 6 weeks at Air Studios on the beautiful island of Montserrat, beginning in December of 1982. It actually took 8 weeks, but it took them 2 weeks to really begin working in earnest. The band recorded their basic tracks live in 3 separate rooms. Stewart Copeland drumming in the dining room, connected to the control room via a video link, Sting singing and playing bass in the control room, and Andy Summers in the actual studio playing guitar. According to co-producer and engineer Hugh Padgham, this was done for 2 reasons: to obtain optimal sound recordings and for quote-unquote social reasons. Stewart Copeland said, "Andy and I had ideas of our own, but by the time we got there, Sting had figured everything out." Sting was essentially running things and performing in the control room. He wrote most of the songs and therefore felt justified in dictating the musical direction. Plus, he was the most famous heartthrob in the room. This was rubbing the others the wrong way, especially Stewart. Imagine playing drums in the dining room. Sure, Hugh Padgham got a great huge drum sound out of recording in that room, but Stewart was not only being forced out creatively, he felt physically isolated from everyone else. And if the control room didn't bother to press the talkback button, Copeland couldn't even hear post-take discussions and feedback on his drum takes. In the studio, the tension is so high that you could hear it twanging like an out-of-tune piano. As a group, we seemed to swing between high emotional intensity and sophomoric fraternity with frightening ease, almost like a group version of bipolar disorder. The best result is, when that happens, we can play with an empathy that it's hard to imagine achieving with other people. The goofy, sarcastic Copeland and the deep, serious former schoolteacher Sting had an incredible musical connection as a rhythm section, but their personalities had already been at odds for years. The pair were pushing each other's buttons mercilessly. Sometimes it was fun, but sometimes things got physical. They were sick of each other. Sting and Stewart hated each other. And although Andy didn't show as much venom, he could be quite grumpy. And there were both verbal and physical fights in the studio. I'd try to be Mr. Producer and get in the way, saying, "Come on, do we have to kick the shit out of one another?" When Summers learned Air Studios owner and Beatles producer George Martin was on the island, Andy approached him for advice. Martin listened and sympathized, but ultimately refused to get involved, encouraging Summers to work it out with his bandmates. Every breath you take was a particularly tense one to get down, almost breaking down the recording sessions. Padgham told Sound on Sound, like most of the other songs, the actual recording started out with loads of takes of the backing track because Stewart usually screwed up. It was hot, there was no air conditioning where he was playing, and he'd be really sweaty, so sometimes the sticks would fly out of his hands when it all got very exciting. In fact, I even gaffered the sticks to his hands and the headphones to his head to keep them in place. So that was part of the problem. And then there was the fact that Sting wanted to keep every breath you take really simple, meaning that we'd have to go for another take if Stewart played a fill that he didn't like, and then cobble the whole thing together. Remember, this was the days before Pro Tools, when we'd have to use a razor blade. So even though it was Sting who'd generally be involved in these decisions, it would still be hard to keep his interest. He's not one to show patience or any interest in studio techniques. Indeed, the approach on the record was becoming far from the original live recordings that the band had intended. Eventually, Stewart's drums were multi-tracked from a selection of elements: a hi-hat with 300 millisecond delay, a kick created out of an Oberheim drum box, the gong and cymbal swell played with mallets for the swooshes going into the chorus, and a sharp backbeat created by simultaneously playing an exceptionally tightly tuned snare and a tama gong drum. Sting was also not a perfect bassist. He often had to do overdubs. Although he's a terrific musician, I have to say that his playing could be quite sloppy. This wasn't helped by him bouncing up and down on his jogging mat, and asking him to please bounce a little less would only encourage him to bounce more. The synths and guitars also required layers of specifically arranged overdubs to achieve Sting's desired lushness of sound. Stewart Copeland told Revolver in 2000, "In my humble opinion, this is Sting's best song with the worst arrangement. I think Sting could have had any other group do this song and it would have been better than our version, except for Andy's brilliant guitar part. Basically, there's an utter lack of groove. It's a totally wasted opportunity for our band. Even though we made gazillions off of it, and it's the biggest hit we ever had. Sting wanted Stewart to just play a very straightforward rhythm with no fills or anything, and that was the complete antithesis of what Stewart is about. Stewart would say, 'I want to put my drum part on it,' and Sting would say, 'I don't want you to put your drum part on it. I want you to put what I want you to put on it.' It was really quite difficult. I remember quite clearly working full on for 10 days and having nothing on tape that was playable. Eventually, manager Miles Copeland arrived to calm everyone down and arrange for the song and the record to be completed after the holidays. The Police and Hugh spent the 1982 Christmas holiday on the Caribbean island of Nevis, taking a few more weeks off and reconvening at Quebec's studio Morin Heights in mid-January. The new location allowed Stewart and Sting to ski, and also to completely avoid each other. There were 3 strong creative minds in the band. Naturally, each was vying for some degree of creative control, but Sting was so unwavering in his vision, he became, domineering and disrespectful. He was so focused on his creative vision, it seems like he stopped caring about preserving the partnership of the Police. Every breath you take, wrapped around your finger, were all about my life. And so that was the end of the Police, because I realized that I couldn't involve this kind of personal work in a democratic process. So it was very clear to me during the making of this record that this was the end of the Police. On multiple occasions, Stewart Copeland came into the studio in the morning to record a drum element while Sting was out skiing. Stu would then leave to go skiing, with morning skier Stingo returning in the afternoon to demand Hugh erase Stewart's freshly recorded drum parts. This sort of thing must have been extremely tense for the engineer and producer, but Sting was running the sessions and Hugh inevitably sided with him. And the success of the record can in large part be attributed to Sting's leadership. Reportedly, Sting makes between $2,000 and $5,000 every day on royalties from Every Breath You Take alone. In May 2019, the song was recognized by BMI as being the most played song in radio history. I mean, think of that, the most played song in radio ever. The creepy themes of the song get lost to a casual listener, and the music's pretty, so Every Breath You Take comes across as a love song. The music seems to insist on it. Andy Summers said in his book, "Making albums is a brutal affair. You are forced to stand down moodily and let go of an idea, play someone else's idea, watch all your cherished licks go out the window, often accompanied by boos and jeers. It's painful because none of us likes being told what to do or being controlled in any way. But from the pain comes the growth, and that's what it's all about." Synchronicity dropped in June of 1983. The Police were popular enough that A&M Records released the record with 38 different US cover variations. The cover variants, conceived by Jeff Ayeroff and Norman Moore, feature different photo arrangements by Dwayne Michaels and various color swaths of blue, yellow, and red. There's a link in the description to a video showing all of the different variants. The one I have is a bit unusual. It's number 38, a mix-up version with multiple band members in each stripe. The label and the band could trust the investment in making 38 different covers would be worthwhile. They believed fans would eagerly snap up multiple copies, making the record #1 in the United States. They also invested in pressing the original album on audiophile vinyl. If you want to know if you have an original pressing, hold it up to the light. If light shines purple through the record, you have a Synchronicity original audiophile record on purple vinyl. Synchronicity would be their most successful record, selling over 8 million copies in the United States alone. Nominated for 5 Grammys that year, the album took home 3. But despite the massive creative success, the band was still experiencing immense tensions. I'm not sure I can even imagine the amount of pressure they were under as they embarked on their world tour, but I imagine it was considerable. The tour supporting this hit record was formidable. Throughout 1983 and 84, the Police played 105 concerts in the United States and overseas. Supporting acts included Ministry, Stevie Ray Vaughan, James Brown, Peter Tosh, Talking Heads, Oingo Boingo, Madness, and more. Rumors of the band's impending breakup were already swirling. There's the story of Stewart Copeland's drumheads painted with a message directed towards Sting. Off, you. Or Stewart setting up his cymbals so they blocked his view of Sting and he wouldn't have to look at him while they were performing. But aside from the very real tensions here, a brotherly ball busting was constantly in full effect and often on full display for the press.
My guitar on.
I'd like to advertise for a new band, please.
Yeah,
Hold on.
Anyhow.
We need to get a little bit of synchronicity here, if I may be so
Oh,
bold.
synchronicity has nothing to do with order. It's more to do with chaos.
It doesn't mean anything, Sting.
We're like this all the time, you know?
This is it.
We'd be like
This is
this
what you
tomorrow.
get.
But at the moment, I want to have a fight.
Tell you what, should we film me whooping Sting?
Yes,
That would be good, wouldn't
that
it?
would be great.
But though Stewart Copeland admits to breaking Sting's rib, he laughingly denies that hatred or animosity was behind it. There's a story about when I broke Sting's ribs. Before we played Shea Stadium in New York, everyone saw we were horsing around. Sting grabbed my copy of the New York Times and wouldn't let go, and I wanted my New York Times back. I did put my knee in his rib cage, and he did have a hairline fracture of one rib. But it became this story about how we hated each other. The Police did a few shows on the Amnesty tour with U2, and even tried unsuccessfully to record another album after Synchronicity, but the magic was gone by then. But in short, the band didn't really hate each other, they just had creative needs and the opportunity to indulge them. The Police officially split in '86, just before the release of their greatest hits record, Every Breath You Take the singles. The re-recorded Don't Stand So Close to Me 1986 was their last proper single. And I hesitate to tell this story, but here it is. Rumor has it that during the sessions for Don't Stand So Close to Me '86, supposedly Sting gave Stewart flowers with a switchblade in them. Now the only place I read this is the New York Post, so if you know anything about it, please comment below. I suspect it was a joke if it happened at all. The Police reunited for a 5-month tour in 2007. I went to the show at Fenway Park in Boston. It was okay. Stewart Copeland told The Guardian in January 2020, "For Sting, music was a painkiller, an anesthetic, a way to escape from the evil, harsh, grim world to a place of utter, unassailable, unblemished beauty. For me, it's a celebration. Let's light up this room and let's have fun." And now we understand that. And Sting and I get along famously, as long as we're not playing music. If you dug that one, ballers, please click like and subscribe. It's a huge help to the channel. And check out this in-depth rock doc about the Smiths. It's pretty interesting, man. Peace.